Welcome back to First Light, the podcast where we explore the joys of transformative leaders who inspire positive change in their fields and communities. I'm your host, Chris Keller, and today I'm thrilled to introduce a guest who truly embodies leadership and entrepreneurship. Joining us today is Kelly Roach. Kelly began her career in corporate, quickly rising to become the youngest senior vice president at her Fortune 500 company. She built her business to over 7 figures while still in the corporate world and has since grown that business to over 8 figures while launching and growing 5 additional companies and a 2-time Inc. 5000 award winner. Kelly is on a mission to empower entrepreneurs to lead effectively and scale their business in today's contracting economy. We'll be diving deep into Kelly's insights on leadership, the importance of strong entrepreneurial mindset, and how she manages staying fully present for her family while building an empire. Let's get started. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me here on First Light. I know you started your career in the corporate world, became one of the youngest senior vice presidents at a Fortune 500 company. Can you share a bit about that experience and how did your time in corporate prepare you for the transition to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was not my dream or my goal. I wanted to be an executive in a corporation. And, when I started my career in Fortune 500, I started in the most entry level position they had. And I was a personal producer. I did sales and recruiting. And, over the course of, a decade, 7 promotions in my first 8 years with the firm, I went from being a producer myself to building a team of 100 people, and I ended up managing 17 locations. And you asked me, how did that prepare me for transitioning into the world of entrepreneurship? I learned everything that I know about business during that time. And there's no way I could be doing what I do today without spending those years building teams, hiring, recruiting, training, leading, developing KPIs, managing, P&Ls and budgets, and doing branch turnarounds and all of those things. So I feel very blessed to have had that time in corporate. And, it really informed so much of what I do as a leader in managing the companies in my portfolio today, and obviously leading other people to build successful businesses. So that was definitely a blessing for me. And, it really, it is the school of hard knocks. And I think a lot of people discredit their past experiences when they become an entrepreneur. But I think a lot of the most important things that you learn when working for someone else, and you develop skills, and you also develop ideas about what you want to create in the world and what you want to be, and what you don't want to create in the world and what you don't want to be. And I think that duality is part of the magic of how evolution and innovation happens.
Well, you talked about it a lot there, and one thing that when I always hear somebody say KPIs, I always laugh because before, I got into business coaching and before it really transformed, I didn't know what a KPI was. So I heard
Mm,
KPI for the first time. I'm like, what are they talking about? I had no idea.
yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about before you got into corporate, before you really took off in the business world. Tell us about your life before then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I danced competitively growing up, and I was an All American All Star for cheerleading. And that was kind of like my deep passion. And, I also came from, a large family where we struggled financially. And so it was very difficult to, be able to afford to do some of those things that I wanted to do. And so I started working at a really young age. Even when I was in college, I think I had like 5 different jobs that I was doing. And I ended up going to the school, even though I got into 8 different colleges, I ended up going to the school that I was going to be in the least amount of debt coming out, because I knew that it was me, myself, and I that was going to be paying those loans afterwards. And the thing that came about as a result of that is when I got to Westchester University, which is where I went to school, and I had the best 4 years and such an incredible experience. But they did not have a very good dance or cheerleading team there. They're not the best sports college in the world. And so I was 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia, and I had had this really high level dance training, and I had been on a competitive cheerleading team in my high school. And so I ended up auditioning for the NFL, and I became the youngest NFL cheerleader for the Philadelphia Eagles. So that was pretty cool. And that also taught me a ton about what it's like to work for a organization with really high standards, and how to communicate and navigate, really working with everyone from the average Joe to the CEO up in the boxes. And it taught me a lot about discipline, right? Because those are 14, 15-hour days. And, for me on Friday nights, I would be in bed, or, Saturday nights in bed, getting ready for game day the next day. And you'd hear everybody outside screaming and getting ready to go to the bars the night before. And you're like in bed at 9 o'clock, knowing that you have a 14-hour day the next day. So, yeah, I mean, I think every experience in life is like a lily pad. Everything leads you to where you're meant to go next. And I think that there's something amazing that lies in every situation, every experience that you have. And it's kind of up to you to be able to like identify what you can learn and how you can grow, plan it exactly where you are, and maximizing that, and then also using that to move to whatever is the next step for you.
And I know you have to manage a lot as all the different hats you kind of wear. And you said one thing that was important. I thought was discipline. So talk about where that discipline came from for you and how you really developed discipline in your life. Because to achieve what you've achieved and to done what you've done, discipline had to play a big role in that.
Yeah, I mean, all success stems from discipline, right? And so for me, discipline stemmed from a desire to have a better life, right? When I got into my corporate job, I was the first one in and the last one out basically every day for years and years and years. I would use my key and I'd open up the office on the weekend, and I'd go in and I work on the weekends. And so discipline has to stem from a burning desire to have something better or different for yourself. And I think, one of the most important life realizations for people is that the people that you see achieving everything that you want to have in your life, whether it's the body, the relationship, the job, the career, the income, the success, whatever it is, those people are typically not the most talented people. They are the most disciplined people. And understanding that distinction is really, really important. And that's why I reread the book Think and Grow Rich every single year. And actually now I'm taking my 10-year-old daughter through it. And that book is like the ultimate guidebook for life, because basically, to me, to summarize it, it basically tells you you can have, be, or do anything that you want if you take total accountability for your life, right? And I think the degree to which you understand that, it really simplifies making big goals and making big dreams come true, because it's like, just take responsibility, right?
We'll talk about in doing that in discipline, you have to take care of yourself because you work hard. You were the first one there, the last one to leave, working the weekends. How did you take care of yourself during that time as well?
Yeah, I mean, lots of walking. I have a you can't see it right now, but I have a walking pad literally like a foot away from me right now. I slide it over when I'm on my internal team calls, and then I slide it over when I'm off. So you have to keep moving, right? A couple months ago, I had a desk chair, and I was finding myself on Zoom too often, and I was like, the chair is done, and the chair got moved away and it got replaced with a walking pad. And so, whether it was in corporate, I took a lot of my conference calls while I was walking outside on the phone. And now I'm here and I'm on camera a lot as a business leader in the online world today. And so I get on the walking pad. You got to keep moving, right? You got to fuel your mind, fuel your body, and just keep moving.
Yeah, and how important is that to you for in physical exercise, and how much do you speak to your entrepreneurs, the people you coach, about the importance of personal health and wellness and when they're trying to grow a business and be successful?
Yeah. Well, the simplest way that I can put it, and this is how I've explained it to people for many years, is that you will always have a mental and physical breakthrough before you have a business breakthrough. I've never seen anyone that was burnout, broken down, just struggling mentally and physically, all of a sudden burst into and be able to sustain this next level of business success. It really is, it's mental and physical, and then that is what translates into the results that you're getting. And that's another reason why I always say, and this is beyond the realm of exercise, but I tell people all the time, your biggest advantage in business is having a happy home life. So, taking care of your relationships, staying close with your spouse, your family, prioritizing your core values, all of those things. I will tell you, I've been in the entrepreneurial world coaching since 2012. I've seen a lot of people come and go in the online space. And I will tell you, the two biggest things that takes people out in the online space that otherwise were very successful, 7-figure, 8-figure, massive success, their health, whether it's mental or physical, or their relationship. These are the two things that take people out. And so, if you want to sustain success over a period of time, you have to take care of yourself. You have to prioritize your family, keep things good at home, and then you can show up and you can perform at a high level from a business standpoint.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that stands out to me about your story is how you've been able to grow your business while staying fully present for your family. Can you walk us through how you manage your time and maintain that work life balance? I know for me, I have three young kids, 8, 5, and 4, and a team of I think 76 people now. So talk to us about that for you and how you managed all that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have known what my priorities were, from the very beginning when I was a senior vice president working in the corporate world and I started my company. I didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job and start my company." I started working on the side, building my business at night and on the weekends. And even at that time in our lives, my husband and I knew that our first priority was our family. And so we retired my husband from working in the corporate world, and he got out of the work world and came to manage our home world. And so he's been home full time since my daughter was born, and that's a full-time job and career in and of itself. But it's just making decisions, right? It's making choices based on your core values. And for me, like my first 10 years in business, even up until really today, I didn't travel for conferences. I don't do a lot of speaking engagements. I pick and choose what I've done, and I've built a wildly successful portfolio of companies. We've broken a lot of barriers in the online space, and we've been, the people that have really created the new 4-minute mile in a lot of ways for different people in the online space. But I've been very selective about what I will and won't do based on how much time it's going to take me away from my family, and based on the things that I would have to compromise and sacrifice in order to do that. And it's not about like working hard or not working hard. It's about working hard and holding true to your core values. And I think that those two things can be in relationship and rapport with one another. But I think you do have to be very, very discerning in order to make that work.
Well, you say core values. So for me, prior to business coaching, prior to that, world, I felt like I knew myself, right? I knew what was important to me, but I never really defined core values. And when I truly defined a vision statement and when I truly sat down, put pen to paper, wrote down core values, that's when things really took off and changed for me. And we truly at my company make hiring and firing decisions based on core values and whether people are going to share our vision. So, talk to us about core values in the sense of you personally holding those core values personally and how you make decisions based on core values.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts by knowing what they are. Number one, like most people don't even have their values written down. They don't know like what their values are. So I think it starts by knowing what they are. And then secondarily, it's actually making decisions. And when you know your core values, it's very easy. People say they have decision fatigue all the time. If you know your core values, most decisions are already made for you because you either are or are not going to do something because it either does or does not align with the life that you're trying to construct for yourself. So I think one is know them, write them down, and then make decisions based on them. Right. And I think then translating that into a company is you getting clear on the standards that you're going to uphold and the things that you will and will not tolerate. And there has to be kind of a clear energetic boundary around what we do and what we don't do here, right? And the way that you do things. And when you are very clear about the culture that you're creating and the core values that you set as a standard in your organization, it's very easy to see when someone doesn't fit or when something doesn't fit. And it's a lot easier to make the right decisions because everyone sees it and understands it and is in support of it. So I think, just being really clear about what is it that you look for in a team member, and what is it that is a standard that you require someone to uphold if they're representing your brand, and what are the things that we do and we don't do here, and making that clear, I think, makes it a lot easier to run a cohesive firm that's going to have a lot more velocity, because you don't have friction in it all the time.
Before I had core values, before I had a vision, I made a lot of mistakes and had some massive failures. Not that I've avoided all failures and made some
Yeah.
mistakes since. But talk to us about some failures that you had along the way during your business journey that you kind of bounced back from and learned from.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, first of all, what I'll say is everything that we do today and everything that works for us today didn't work before it did work. So I think a lot of times, I say this to my team every single day, like, the day that you don't fail at something is the day that you didn't try. And I think that successful people, you all have heard this quote probably before, successful people fail more times at something than an unsuccessful person has even tried. And I try to live by that every single day. So when you say, like, what is something that I failed at? I failed at everything that we do, right? My launches weren't successful before they were successful. I hired the wrong people before I hired the right people, right? Like, I could go through the list, but I think the key thing is, I think that a lot of people, because we're taught in school, failure is bad. We're taught in school that, if you don't do something the right way, that you're not going to have a successful life. There's a lot of unlearning that you have to do to be a successful entrepreneur, because the vast majority of what makes you successful as an entrepreneur is willingness to innovate and disrupt and to try new things and to run a lot of tests. But if you're afraid to fail, you'll never do that, because most of what you're trying isn't going to work. And I think that's the biggest thing I would say to entrepreneurs that want to grow faster is you have to be willing to fail more often, because the more often you're willing to fail, the bigger breakthroughs that you're going to have, and the sooner that you're going to get to a new outcome that can provide a bigger and better result.
Absolutely. I know you're a best-selling author, top-ranked podcaster, and to put yourself out there in those platforms to share your story and to share yourself in a book, and then also to take on a podcast and to constantly appear on podcasts is a lot. So, talk to us about putting yourself out there, how you kind of stepped into that world and put yourself out there that way, and got us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, I'm a firm believer that we all have a mission and we all have a message, right? And I think that, God's gift to us, like Leo Buscaglia says, God's gift to us is our talent, and our gift back to God is what we do with it. And, that's the biggest thing I would say is, like, your life is like a process of you taking your gifts and doing the most good that you can possibly do with those gifts, and that includes using your voice, and it includes sharing and giving of yourself, and it includes you being willing to put yourself out there so that other people can learn and grow and benefit from your experience and from your highs and from your lows. So I think it's just all a journey of sharing and giving and maximizing the gifts and the talent that we've been given.
For some people to step out there is uncomfortable. So what's that best piece of advice you give them for that first step to take?
Yeah, I mean, we're all horrible when we start, right? Like, my first few videos that I did definitely were a little cringeworthy, right? And the only way that you get good at anything is practicing, right? So if you are waiting to do something until you're good at it, you're never going to get good at it. The only way to get good at it is practice. And so that's the biggest thing I would tell everybody is, like, we all have those stories behind us of, you know, a crappy start, or a less than successful this, or an uncomfortable that, but you got to push through that, and the only way to get good is practice.
Your mission is to empower entrepreneurs with the skills to lead effectively and grow their businesses in challenging times. How do you further that mission? What's the
What
things
we're
that you
doing right now, right? So, I mean, I record, I write, I create, I teach, I share, I speak, I do everything I can do to just put the power back in people's hands to realize just how significant their voice is and their gifts are, and that there's room for everyone to be successful, and there's room for everyone to lead in their own way and in their own capacity. And I think I'm just doing everything I can do to get the word out and invite people. We need leadership. We need thought leadership. We need people that are, stepping forward and using their voice in a powerful and meaningful way in all different capacities of business and life. And so I think it's just about extending that invitation to as many people as possible.
I know you've had some big goals in helping entrepreneurs and also building your own portfolio. Talk about the importance of setting the goals and how you go about achieving those goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is setting the goal, right? When we were a six-figure company, I set a goal to become a seven-figure company, and then when we were a seven-figure company, I set a goal to become an eight-figure company, and when we become an eight-figure company, I set a goal to build $100 million portfolio. And it all starts with a dream, and it all starts with an imagination, and it all starts with willingness to say, I'm not sure how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And so I love the process of setting and achieving goals. I love the process of, business building, which is basically problem solving. And I think the degree to which entrepreneurs can look at that process of growth like, it's just a Rubik's cube. You're going to try different things, you're going to match different things up, you're going to figure out what works. Try to have fun and smile a little bit along the way. No one cares as much as you do, right? The people that are further along than you are never going to judge you. And everybody else is going to be watching and learning from you. And I think just remembering that and not taking yourself too seriously, I think that's where it all starts.
I always like to ask what kind of the best piece of advice you would give you're talking to your daughter about reading the book, and that's an amazing book. I've got a copy on my bookshelf that I'll share with my son. You've talked me into sharing it with him. He's 8. Maybe I'll wait till he's 10. But what's
Mhm.
that piece of advice that you give young people who are coming up? This is an ever changing world. It's an ever changing landscape, especially for entrepreneurs. Um, what's that advice that you give those who are looking to kind of adapt and grow with this ever changing landscape?
Well, I would say first and foremost, lean into your faith. I think that pursuing something bigger than yourself and being a part of creating positive change in the world and using your gifts really ties back to a higher calling and a higher purpose for your life. And one of the things I'm really trying to instill in my daughter is just like having that moral compass and having that ethical grounding and having faith, right? Having faith that there is something bigger than you and that you're a part of, and whatever that looks like spiritually or religiously or whatever, it's different for everyone. But I think that's a huge piece of it. And just to dream big and to be willing to fail a lot and to try to have fun along the way. That's what I would say.
Lastly, I talk to people about the routine. So for me, one of the biggest changes over my life was coming up with a very intentional morning routine. The power of the morning routine. I'm up sleeping at 5 a.m. and sleeping late for me. I'm up. I have my routine that I go through. So, what kind of routine do you follow, if any?
I don't follow like a detailed morning routine. But what I will say is I give myself quiet in the morning. I give myself space for prayer and meditation in the morning. I do the most important work first, which typically is profit producing activities and leading my team. I set up my days and my weeks according to themes and recurring time blocks. So I have a lot of freedom because I have a lot of discipline, if that makes sense. So my week is very rigid, which also gives me big open spaces to do what I want when I want to do it. So I think, like I said, kind of coming back to the beginning of the conversation, my biggest piece of advice for entrepreneurs, your business is kind of like Cookie Monster. It's going to take everything you give it, right? So you got to tame the beast. You got to tame the beast. So recurring time blocks, building in theme days, dropping in the big rocks first, which really are your family and your faith, and making sure you have time to keep yourself well, and keep yourself operating and able to perform at a peak level, and just really being clear on what your priorities are and what your priorities aren't. Because I think a lot of people that are overwhelmed and stressed in their businesses, a lot of times their energy is diluted in so many different directions, and it's hard for them to get traction on anything.
I found it interesting. You talked about silence. So, having a house full of kids, silence is it's hard to come by. So that morning
Yeah,
time for me is, having that silence in the morning, and I do practice silence. It's amazing,
yeah.
the power of silence. Talk about the power of silence and how that really can change and impact you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where the answers come, right? That's where the answers come. So if every second of every day is filled with conversation and answering questions and responding and conversing and all these things, that's not where your answers come, right? The solutions and the breakthroughs and the epiphanies and the subconscious insights, they drop in when you give them space to drop in. And so I think that silence in the morning is absolutely crucial to get the important answers to things that you are trying to have big breakthroughs on.
Yeah, the thing, speaking about meditation too, and this is all new to me over the last year and a half. But as a visionary leader and understanding what a visionary leader is, my mind was always going 100 miles an hour. I always had
Yeah.
so much going on in there
Yeah.
that I had a hard time slowing it down
Yeah.
and focusing on kind of one thing. My thing was I always wanted to go on to the next thing. I would
Yeah.
do 90% of the work, but wouldn't finish off the work, wouldn't get the last 10% done because I was on to the next big thing. So
Yeah.
talk about meditation too and how that really helps you to slow down that mind and have those breakthroughs.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? I think that's exactly what it does. It allows you to slow down your mind. And it's kind of interesting because metaphorically, like with business, it's always slow down to speed up, right? Like taking massive action works when it's the right massive action. Moving really quickly with great urgency works when it's great urgency on the right things, right? And so the characteristics that make a great leader and a great CEO, they're decisive, they move fast, they drive massive action, right? All of those things. But you need to make sure that they're pointed towards the right activities and the right outcomes. And that's where meditation and quiet and reflection really come in to help you make sure that you're pointed in the right direction when you then leap into action. And now you're like a rocket out of the gate. Well, let's hope that the rocket is pointed at the right target. And that's what I think meditation does for you.
Awesome. Kelly, tell us, for the listeners out there that may not know you, the best way to find you, get a hold of you to consume your content and to learn more from you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the Kelly Roach Show is definitely the place to be. I release multiple episodes every single week: business growth, scale, spirituality, family life, quality of life, like just all things mindset and building your empire. So, Kelly Roach Show, anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Kelly, thank you for your time. I know that we're both looking at an impending storm coming our way. So I know you got some
Yeah,
things to do. I do appreciate your time and taking some time to speak to my audience on First Light.
abs- absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us today. From rising to the top in the corporate world to empowering entrepreneurs across the globe, you've shown us that true leadership is about more than just success. It's about resilience, balance, and purpose. For all our listeners, I encourage you to check out Kelly's book, tune into her podcast, and follow her work. Her mission to help entrepreneurs navigate today's ever-changing world is more relevant than ever, and I'm sure we all learned something valuable today. As always, thank you for tuning in to First Light. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with someone who you might benefit from Kelly's story. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories of transformation, and until next time, keep shining your light.